Without George Golden, the ship would have sunk. Had it sunk, I assume when debris washed ashore the next day, it would have been blamed on Egypt. Many, many miracles that day. I shouldn't be here. After watertight integrity had been established and the hatch had been sailed, they reopened it as I floated by. Bud Schnell, went down and pulled me out. I'm not supposed to be here. None of us should be alive today.
Much to my dismay, I personally witnessed the machine gunning of life rafts as they floated by the Israeli torpedo boat crew members, raked the life rafts thoroughly with machine gun fire, making sure that if there had been anyone in the life rafts, they would not have survived.
After the Israeli torpedo blew a huge hole in the Liberty, the last 3 life rafts were put over the side. Israeli torpedo boats sank 2 of those rafts, took the 3rd aboard. We were left with no rafts, nothing that could float. Shooting life rafts on a ship in distress is a war crime.
Worst of all is what our government is doing to cover all this whole thing up. When I heard that Johnson, in the heat of the battle, was telling the Admiral Geis of the 6th Fleet that he didn't give a damn if every man drowned and the ship sinks. He said, I don't give a damn if every man drowns and the ship sinks. I don't want to embarrass our allies. That made me sort of wonder, with unmarked planes, how did he know it was our allies?
We should have had planes on site 45 minutes into this 2-hour attack, and they never showed. So did Israel apologize and then continue to attack us for an hour and 15 more minutes, or were we being lied to as to the conditions of why they recalled the planes? And because of it, top secret operation of Liberty, and it being the sensitivity of it being Israel, our closest ally, who accidentally attacked the ship, that we are ordered not to grant any interviews. Don't discuss this among yourselves, referring to the attack. Don't get over on the beach drinking in the bars and running your mouth. And he says, in fact, if you go ashore in Malta, you will remove your ship's name from your jersey or go ashore in civilian clothes. Well, another light goes off in my mind. Here's a flag admiral in the middle of the gung-ho 6th Fleet telling enlisted men to go ashore in civilian clothes that we're not even authorized to possess. And he says, so that we won't be singled out and be asked questions about it. And he says, don't discuss the attack among yourselves. Don't write your friends back home about it. He says, in fact, when you get back home, don't even discuss it with your wife and family. And he said quite sternly, just forget it ever happened. And he says that repercussions for violating these orders to silence could result in your court-martial, imprisonment for violating national security, or worse.
I noticed a very large helicopter with Israeli markings hovering very close to us. I looked in the door of the helicopter, which was open, and I could see a number of Israelis carrying automatic weapons. They had just heard that the 6th Fleet had finally launched aircraft to come to our assistance, and so they just left the scene.
Helicopter gunships, I'm sure in my mind, would have picked off survivors if we'd abandoned ship. They were sent there to finish us off. The aircraft were sent to make us incommunicado, so we couldn't send an SOS out. The torpedo boats were sent to sink us, and the helicopters were sent to pick off survivors, so there'd be no trace. It was a perfectly executed military operation. If you look at the photographs of the Liberty after the attack, on the first strafing run, they used heat-seeking missiles that took out the tuning section of every transmitting antenna on the ship. In less than 2 seconds, they had taken out all our communication capability.
The attack on the USS Liberty lasted as long as the attack on Pearl Harbor, about 2 hours. You've heard the outrageous, implausible Israeli version of the attack on Liberty, told by their first-hand observers. You've heard what actually happened, told by the valiant Liberty crew. Now, hear what some of America's greatest heroes and leaders have to say. Colonel Mitchell Page was the last Marine standing after repulsing a Japanese regiment on Guadalcanal.
We all know that this was in international waters. It was an unprovoked, intentional attack on a U.S. vessel with one objective: to sink it and kill all aboard. Unprovoked attack. I think it was dastardly. I think it was a betrayal of any friendship that we may have had with that nation. And I think that it should be exposed to the entire world and all brought out so that the whole world would know the actual truth about that particular day in 1967.
And very widely could see this was an American ship. And not only did the Israelis attack it, they did this with their Army, Navy, and Air Force.
Though badly wounded, Navy Master Chief Bob Bush held off a Japanese advance while saving his commanding officer's life.
You know, it's impossible for me to figure out why maybe I would sit here and attack you when we're friends. I mean, they're getting our money to buy those French airplanes, and then they turn around and attack our ship when they can see that it's our ship. It's absolutely uncalled for.
Army Colonel Lou Millett led the last bayonet charge against vastly superior Chinese forces in Korea.
I was in World War II. I studied all the different types of aircraft so that when I shot at a plane, I made sure I was shooting at the enemy and not ours. They know what those ships look like, and if they don't, I can't conceive that they don't know. I do know this. It was a criminal act. It was an act of war. It's as bad as Vietnam, allowing people who would try to save people from tyranny to die for nothing.
Admiral Thomas Moorer is the longest-serving active four-star admiral in American history. He is the only American admiral to have commanded both the Atlantic and Pacific fleets. He was head of NATO forces, served as chief of naval operations, and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff for 2 terms. The Navy's chief fighter, the F-14 Tomcat, was named after Admiral Tom Moorer.
The question is, if the Israelis thought the frequencies they jammed were in fact broadcast by the Egyptian ship, why did they jam the American frequencies? There's no question about the fact that the jamming of the Liberty frequencies was deliberate and was undoubtedly ordered by high authority. Since a large part of the casualties were caused by torpedo boats, could have been prevented from making those attacks by the aircraft that were on their way to help when they were recalled.
Admiral Arleigh Burke was known as Mr. Navy. His long and illustrious career was capped by him becoming the Chief of Naval Operations. The high-tech modern American Navy destroyers were named the Arleigh E. Burke class of destroyer.
And don't know yet why we didn't protect that ship. I don't know why the Israelis would take such terrific chances. It must have been something that was very important to them to decide to attack without considering the probability of war.
Recuperating from serious throat surgery, the Saratoga skipper, Joe Tully, spoke about the launch and recall of protective aircraft.
I had launch ready at that time 12 aircraft, conventionally armed, and I immediately launched them. And to my surprise, the America did not launch. About the same time, a message came from Rear Admiral Larry Geis, who was the Carrier Division commander, and who was not the officer in tactical command, but who was senior to me, who had somehow been given tactical command or assumed it, ordering the strike aircraft to return to Saratoga.